friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another week of What's for Dinner. If you're new here, hello and welcome. I am Taylor. I'm a stay-at-home wife and mom, and I share these What's for Dinner videos every Sunday to hopefully give you some new meal ideas to make for your family or give you some motivation to cook more for your family. That's why I started doing these videos about 4 years ago. I needed some motivation to cook more at home instead of going out. So the videos have really helped me, and I love hearing that they help y'all as well. So if you like these kinds of videos, I hope that you'll subscribe down below. Now let's go ahead and get into this week's What's for Dinner. Friday night I made a baked tortellini casserole. So to start off, I'm browning up 1 pound of ground beef, and I seasoned that with some onion powder, garlic powder, a little bit of crushed red pepper, and some Italian seasoning and salt and pepper. When that ground beef was almost all the way done, I added in 1/2 pound of ground pork that I had. I had cooked this up last week and used half of it for a recipe, and the other half I cooked up and just froze. And so this is cooked, but it's not seasoned. So I add this in with the ground beef just to give a little extra meat and use up that ground pork that was in the freezer. And I added in a little bit more of all of those seasonings that I had already added to the ground beef, and then just let this cook until that ground beef was done and the pork was hot. Once the meat was all cooked through, if you need to drain any grease, drain that, and then return it to the pan with some sauce. I had 2 jars of pasta sauce in my fridge that were like 3/4 of the way full. So I used both of those and then rinsed them really well with some water to get everything out of the jar. If you don't have open jars, just use 2 jars and you'll be fine. But I was still fine with just missing that little bit amount from each jar. And then once you've got all the sauce in there, I added in 1 bag of frozen tortellini. I think that this is like a 19-ounce bag. I will have the exact recipe in the description box down below for you guys. But I just stirred that into the sauce, make sure they were really coated really well, and then I transferred them to a 9x13-inch pan, and then topped this with a bunch of cheese. And then I put this in the oven on 350 for 45 minutes. You just want to cook it until that tortellini is done, because this is frozen. I did not cook the tortellini like before. Some recipes say to like boil your tortellini and then mix it in. I didn't find that necessary to do, and it turned out great. It cooked up great in the oven with the frozen tortellini. So here's what that looked like when it was done. I just let it sit for about 5 minutes before serving it, and we had this with a side salad, and it was delicious. Pretty quick and easy dinner. Saturday night I made a 1-pot shrimp scampi orzo, and so to start off, I've got a pound of shrimp here in this bowl, and to that I'm adding about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And then I'm going to add in some lemon zest, some red pepper flakes, some salt, some pepper, and some minced garlic. And then I just stirred that around and let it marinate for about 30 minutes while I got the rest of the stuff cut up and prepared for dinner. In a large skillet over medium heat, I melted 2 tablespoons of butter with 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And then when that was hot, I added in some diced onion as well as some minced garlic. And I just let that cook until the onion started to get tender. Then I added in a 16-ounce box of orzo and just sauteed that for a couple of minutes so it could get like nice and golden. Don't be like me though and like semi forget about it. Make sure you stir it often and don't let it get too like dark and almost burnt. Like some of my onion pieces look a little bit dark, but it turned out okay. Everything tasted good. Then I added in 1/2 cup of chicken broth. This is supposed to be wine, but whenever there's wine in a recipe, most of the time I just sub it for chicken broth, which you can do if you didn't know that. You don't have to use the wine. It just adds a different element of flavor, but I don't usually have it on hand, so I don't usually use it. So I just added in the 1/2 cup and then let that cook into the orzo, and then once that was fully absorbed, I added in another 4 cups of chicken broth. And then I reduced the heat to low, covered this, and let this cook for about 12 minutes till the orzo was almost done. After the 12 minutes, I removed the lid, gave it a good stir. My orzo was just almost done, not quite done, but almost done, which is perfect because we're going to add in the shrimp and let it continue cooking. So I went ahead and stirred in some Parmesan cheese and some green onions, and then I poured the shrimp over the top, nice even layer all over the top, and then put the lid back on this and let it continue to cook for about 4 to 5 minutes until the shrimp was cooked through. This was the first time I've ever cooked the shrimp like this, just like not frying it in the pan, just like on top of the rice like this, and it turned out really good. I was skeptical previously and like didn't do that in another recipe, but I decided to give it a try this time and it turned out great. Once the shrimp was done, I stirred in some lemon juice and a little bit of parsley. I was actually pretty much out of parsley, so it wasn't very much at all. And then this was ready to eat. This was really good. I would definitely make it again. There's quite a bit of stuff to like cut up and prep for it, but once you get all that stuff like prepped, it's pretty quick and easy to make. You just gotta like, cut up your green onion, prep your lemon, you gotta juice it and get the zest and mince your garlic and all of that. So there's a little bit of prep work, but it is really, really good. I just topped this with a little bit of extra Parmesan cheese, and then we had some salad on the side. Sunday was Mother's Day, and Lily and Elijah wanted to attempt to make dinner for me, so they chose to make the sausage, green beans, and potatoes because it's a favorite and it's like super easy for them. Elijah didn't want to do most of the cooking, but he did want to help with the rolls. So Lily got the sausage cut up, and he got the rolls on the pan and put them in the air fryer. And then Lily got to putting everything in the pot. I've shared this many times before. The recipe comes from my friend Kat over at Southern Farmer Kitchen, so I will leave the recipe link down below. You can go check out her video for all the measurements and everything. The only thing I have been doing different lately is using cans of potatoes because it makes it super simple. You don't have to worry about cutting up a bunch of potato. The only thing you have to cut up is that smoked sausage, and it makes it a lot faster to cook because you, again, don't have to worry about the potato because canned potatoes are already pretty soft. So I used 2 cans, I think it was, 2 cans of canned potatoes, canned sliced potatoes. And here is how it turned out. It was delicious as always. Lily seasoned it well. And we've got our rolls here that Elijah made. And then here are the kids' bowls. And then me and Andy like to top ours with some hot sauce. So it's really good with that if you haven't tried it before. Monday night I made Pollo Fundido, which is a dish that's served at a lot of Mexican American like restaurants, and it goes by different names, but it's usually always the same thing. It's like cut up seasoned chicken with the refried beans and rice, and then like most of it's covered with cheese dip, and it's really good. And I've started making it at home like the past like year or two, and it's really good, as I said before. So I'm just starting off here with some chicken breast. I'm like cutting off like some fatty pieces and cutting my chicken breast in half horizontally so that I have thinner pieces of chicken, because I am going to be cooking this in my cast iron skillet, and it just cooks more evenly that way and it cooks faster. And then once I have it all cut, I'm going to season it up with some adobo seasoning and some of the Goya complete seasoning. Sometimes I use the Badia, sometimes I use the Goya. I think really the only main difference is that the Goya one has cumin in it and the Badia one does not. So I'm just trying to use up the Goya one. I bought it just to try it, but that's really the only difference that I notice is with the Goya one you taste the cumin flavor more, which was really good on this chicken. Then in my cast iron pan, I heated up over a medium-high heat, and I added in some olive oil and butter as usual. And then once that butter was melted, I added in my chicken. I cook it about 5 minutes per side until it reaches the proper internal temperature. Once the chicken was done, I removed it from the pan and let it rest for about 5 minutes, and then I sliced it up. And then to go with it, we've got some refried beans, a Mexican rice. I'll have my video for that linked down below. And then we've got some salsa and some of this El Terrifico, a white cheese dip that I get at Sam's Club. That's our favorite cheese dip, and that's what we use whenever we make this recipe. And then here are our plates. I cut up the kids' chicken into like actual like bite-sized pieces, whereas mine is just like sliced. And I pour a bunch of cheese dip over our chicken and our beans, and then I top mine with a little bit of pico. Tuesday, I made some Parmesan crusted tilapia and some roasted broccoli. So I've got a sheet pan here lined with some parchment paper, and then I topped it with some broccoli. And then on my broccoli, I did some olive oil, some Badilla Complete, some garlic powder, and a little bit of Tony's Creole seasoning. Then I just tossed that around to make sure everything was nice and coated. And then I put that in the oven on 425, and I did it for about 10 minutes, and then at the 10-minute mark is when I put in my tilapia to let everything continue cooking for another 15 minutes. So in all, the broccoli takes about 25 minutes to get it to where we like it. So, and then I'm prepping my tilapia. This is Parmesan crusted tilapia. I've shared it before. It's exactly the same recipe as my cheddar crusted chicken, just you like switch out the cheese and the seasoning to whatever you want to put on the tilapia. The recipe is like very versatile. It originally came actually from like a HelloFresh dinner, and then I like took it and like changed it and made it my own. So for the tilapia this night, I've got some panko in here. You can do panko or you can do like cracker crumbs, whatever you want to use. I'm using panko and Parmesan cheese, and then for seasoning, I did some of the Badilla Complete and a little bit of Tony's Creole seasoning, as well as some salt and pepper, and then I just mix that together really well. And then here on another sheet pan with some parchment paper, I've got 3 pieces of tilapia. I'm going to sprinkle them with a little bit of salt and pepper, and then on each piece I'm going to put about a tablespoon of sour cream and then spread that all over them. Then once I have that sour cream spread all over them, I will take that Parmesan panko mixture and press it onto each piece of fish. And then this goes in the oven at 425 for 15 minutes. When the broccoli was done, I just sprinkled it with a little bit of Parmesan cheese because I had some on hand. I didn't even stick this back in the oven. Just the heat from the broccoli melted the Parmesan cheese just a little bit. And here's what the tilapia looks like when it's done. It gets nice and crispy on top, which is so good. And then to go with it, I just made a box of rice-a-roni chicken flavored rice. And then of course we had our broccoli. Wednesday night, I made a crock pot honey garlic chicken. So in this bowl, I am whisking together the sauce. So for this, I did about 1/3 cup of honey, 1/2 cup of ketchup, 1/2 cup of soy sauce, some oregano, some parsley. But again, I was like basically out of parsley, so I don't think I added hardly any parsley in here at all. And then a bunch of minced garlic. And then I just whisked that together really well. And then in my crock pot, I've already added about 1.5 pounds of chicken thighs. So I just poured my sauce over the top of that and spread it out so all of them were covered with that sauce. And then I just let that cook on high for 4 hours. And here's what that looked like after the 4 hours. I just took some tongs and removed the chicken as best as I could. It was so tender, it was like really falling apart. But I didn't want to shred this. I wanted to like chop it up and have like diced pieces of chicken. So I'm removing this as best as I can without tearing it to shreds. And then to the sauce that's left in the crock pot, I'm going to add a cornstarch slurry, which was just about 1 tablespoon of water mixed with some cornstarch. Whisk that in to thicken the sauce. And then I just chopped that chicken into like bite-sized pieces and added it back into the crock pot and that sauce. And then while this was like sitting in that sauce, I made some white rice to serve it on top of. And here was dinner. I topped the chicken with some sesame seeds for those of us that wanted it, which was just me and Lily and Andy. And Elijah did not want to try the sesame seeds. And ignore these carrots on the plate. They were a disappointment. They were gross and nobody liked them, so nobody ate them. They were the frozen colorful carrots from Aldi that I picked up a couple of weeks ago. You might remember seeing them in a grocery haul. Do not recommend. I seasoned them the way I normally do my carrots, but these still just tasted like dirt. I used a bunch of butter and some honey and made them sweet, and they were They were absolutely terrible and the texture was awful. But the honey garlic chicken was really good. And finally, the last meal of the week, Thursday night, we had Meatball Subs. I'm using the last of this bag of beef meatballs from Sam's Club. Are they the best meatballs in the world? No, they are frozen meatballs. You are not going to have an amazing, delicious frozen meatball that is not a homemade meatball. I've tried them all. I've tried all of the frozen meatballs, and none of them are as good as a homemade meatball. But these ones will do. They're pretty good. They're way better if you make them like in the air fryer, but we're doing simple crockpot meals so I can come home and just like throw dinner together really fast after martial arts. So I threw the frozen meatballs into the crock pot with 1 jar of marinara sauce, and I did rinse that jar with a little bit of water to get everything out. And then I just stirred that around, made sure everything was coated, put a lid on it, and let this cook on low for, we left the house at 2 o'clock. So it was on low for about 5 hours till we got home. And it turned out great. When I got home, I just took the meatballs, spooned them onto our little sandwich rolls. We got some sub buns from Walmart, topped it with some mozzarella cheese, threw it in the air fryer on 350 for about 5 minutes. When it came out, just like closed it up. We had a nice hot toasted meatball sub, and then those of us that like salad had salad, and then Lily had just some fresh veggies on the side with it. And that is going to be it for this week's What's for Dinner. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you plan on trying any of these recipes that I mentioned, let me know in the comments down below which ones you plan on trying. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye!